What up, witches, and welcome to Witchin and Bitchin, a podcast. I'm your host, Darren.
And I'm Vicky. How are you all today? I hope you're doing extremely well.
I'm feeling a little blue today.
Are you?
Yeah, a little
For
blue.
all those, for those viewers who are looking on YouTube, or if you're not on YouTube, you should quickly just go have a quick look. We might even just put a photo, I think, maybe. Darren is now supporting awesome blue hair. I love it.
I decided to
What
go
shade
turquoise.
Is it? Yes, turquoise.
It's turquoise or aquamarine. I don't know what color you'd call this. It's like a very...
I don't know, but I love that there's all these different color, like names for the colors.
Yeah, I like it too.
It looks amazing.
I decided to just embrace the freedom and everything else that this month is about. So
I was going to say, because what are we talking about today? It's very much on point.
Yes, it is. There was a reason I made sure I did.
That's it. That's exactly it.
No, so we're actually talking about Pride Month. Now, for some of our listeners, you might be thinking, oh, this is supposed to be a witchcraft podcast. What's Pride got to do with anything? In actual fact, what you don't realize is that the history of witchcraft and the history of the gays... If that's
I was going to say, I don't actually know what it is, I guess.
But it's actually more intertwined than people realize.
Yeah.
And the thing is that although we call it Pride Month, and what is Pride Month? It's obviously a celebration of everyone, no matter what gender or sexuality you participate in, express, whatever. It's a celebration of everyone. But that includes, Pride Month isn't just for lesbians, gays, bisexuals, transgender, intersex, queer, two-spirited people. I'm not sure if I've missed anyone from the alphabet mafia.
Just go plus.
For me. Also for our allies, of which most of our listeners probably are.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it.
Yeah, so Pride Month is for everybody. It's not just for us gays.
No. See, that's it. And it's such a big celebration. And that's where it's a really beautiful thing that everybody can come together. And like you said, like with allies and things like that as well, that you can all celebrate the inclusivity and just how it's just natural and normal for everybody just to be inclusive and to celebrate together no matter what.
Exactly.
What it is. Like there's no need for anything. So I'm excited about this one, by the way.
So, I am too. I mean,
because we've been chatting off air that we find out, because I always find out little tidbits and stuff like that. There's a lot of there's a lot of big mic drops, I think. So and just how entwined the two actually are.
Yes. So you'll need to hold on to your broomsticks for this episode, people.
That's it.
Because we're about to ride with pride. Whoop, 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 whoop. For those watching on YouTube, I'm actually
we needed a whoosh kind of sound.
Yeah. Because I'm wearing a t-shirt, which is a caricature of a very pride-ridden.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess pride.
He's wearing a rainbow top.
Rainbow crop top.
Crop top.
Wait, I'm not. The person on my top is wearing a rainbow crop top.
Yes. Then I'd be like, everybody get onto YouTube right now.
Anyway, I just thought I'd get in the spirit of it all. But so.
Why not? Because we love all your t-shirts anyway.
Oh, yes. I have some exciting ones coming that I have not worn yet on camera.
I know. So I'm excited.
Actually, on that note, if anyone has any suggestions for a t-shirt that I can get made, let me know.
Yes.
I'm game.
Yes.
My husband hates print t-shirts, and he realizes how many of them I have. He's like,
I was about to say how many you actually would have.
And I keep getting more. He's like, could you wear anything other than a print t-shirt? I'm like, could you wear anything other than your boots? He likes to wear his boots everywhere.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah,
but now you can put it, it's like not a work expense, but there's a reason.
Oh, well, yeah, it is.
It's like a work expense.
Yeah.
See? It's a uniform.
Once a witch, always a witch. You can't stop me.
You can't stop. All right, sorry, we've gone on a tangent.
We love a good tangent.
We love a good tangent. So let's get back to it, shall we?
So I guess where else is a better place to start than at the beginning?
It is.
It's always a good place to start. Yeah, once upon a time in a nursery rhyme, there were 3 bears. A mama and a papa and a bear.
I love that. I knew exactly what that was then. I'm like,
okay, stop.
Stop.
So let's take a trip through the gay history, which is actually going to intertwine with pagan and witchcraft history as well.
Yeah, they both intertwine really well, and it kind of explains everything. We're going to get back to modern times. So like you said, you're going to start at the start.
Exactly. So essentially, like, we're going to go back to 10,000 BCE to start off this story today.
Not even a little bit of going
No.
back. We're going to go way
10,000
back. I love it.
10,000 years before Common Era. So there were actually some cave paintings that were found in the Adora cave, which is near Palermo in Sicily. And it was actually this cave painting where it had these men that had these giant bird masks, and they were dancing around in a circle. So it was seen to be some kind of a ritual or something. Like, anyway, they're basically celebrating something,
gathering kind of
yeah. So we don't know for sure. It's all speculative. Like, we don't know what they were doing.
That's the thing, isn't it? Everything is kind of interpreted, and it is speculative with everything.
Yeah, exactly. So what the things that we do know is, in this particular painting, there were a circle of men dancing around with bird masks, and in the center were two men with erect penises. And they said, so the people who have like actually looked into this have actually come forward and said that they believe it was some form of homoerotic initiation rite. Yeah. So
back from then,
from 10,000 BCE, and so many people have gone through this basic, like, through the cave and looked at these paintings and then tried to add their own spin to it and stuff, but they always come back to the same thing. There was some kind of a sexualized homoerotic initiation ceremony of sorts.
Yeah.
Because like they were all naked dancing around in this big circle.
Yeah.
And that's actually a common theme that is carried on from then. So fast forwarding a little bit into the Stone Age, you then also had a lot of they found a lot of sculptures and things of people of that time, which were effigies or statues of the gods and goddesses, and they were often sexualized. So the males often had erect penises.
Yeah, and you still see it in a lot of things now, don't you?
Yeah, you do. And also the females, like, I mean, if anyone knows the reference to, I think it's called Venus of Willendorf.
Yes.
Is that the one with the very voluptuous, big boob, big bellied kind of stone sculpture?
Yep, stone.
Exactly. So these types of like heavily sexualized things have been found through those times around the Stone Age. And it was common practice that the men who weren't able to hunt would often learn to study the mysteries. So in a lot of this tribal culture, the men would go out and hunt, and the women would stay and look after, like, raising the family, raising the tribe. They would often focus on doing the healing arts and things like that. So it was mainly the women would be the healers and the men would be the hunters, but then men who couldn't hunt would then be with the women. And this was kind of like the dawn of when men first started getting into the mysteries, whereas women had been doing it that entire time. Now, it was also common practice in these tribal times for when they were isolated, men and women, it was actually common practice for homosexual relations to happen, women on women and men on men.
We all got needs.
We all have needs. Exactly that. Now, even if you go through like the different depictions of the goddess throughout history, so we start off with the earliest forms were like Inanna and Dumuzi.
Yep.
We're talking like Babylonian, Mesopotamian, like that kind of era. That location. And then from there, things progressed through, and we then had the introduction of Ishtar and Tammuz, her consort. Then we have Astarte and Adoni, which then became Atorgatis, which then became Athirat and Baal.
I'm so glad you're saying all these names and I'm not.
And then
because you know what I'm like with it.
I'll say this one the correct way. Aphrodite.
Oh, look at you go.
Aphrodite, not Aphrodite, but we'll call it Aphrodite for our viewers.
Oh, say that again.
Aphrodite. So it's not deity. It's not with a hard D.
It's not the D.
It's a the, like when you say the. So Aphrodite. Aphrodite, and who then became Venus.
I'm never going to be able to say that ever again.
You have to say Aphrodite. So the reason I know that is I have a friend, we call her Frida, but it's short for Aphrodite. Her full name is actually Aphrodite. Yeah. And so she taught me because I had to learn how to say her name at the church when we had to go.
To say correctly.
If I said, "Oh, I'm here for Frida's wedding," they're like, "Who?
Who's that?"
Aphrodite, and they're like, "Okay, this way."
That's so cool.
Anyway, so in those times, no, you're fine. In those times, you basically had these. I'm trying to think of the word that we used. I guess. Okay, the translation that's most commonly accepted. So you have the hetera, which were the females, and the hierodule or hierodule, which were the female and male mystics, essentially.
Yeah. So like
hetera
some
was
that can be like the
female.
priesthood kind of thing, like priest and priestess and
Exactly.
those kind of thing. Yep.
Exactly.
Of that particular tradition.
Yeah, so they basically took care of the temples, they ran rituals, they performed divination, healing, and worked with the general public as needed. But with those actual words, they've been translated, like, because obviously language is one of those things that as it evolves, like we get new definitions and new translations. So etymologically speaking, no one really knows what the word means. We just found the closest equivalent.
It's just a guess, really, isn't it?
Exactly. So oftentimes they've been translated as the words prostitute or sacred prostitute.
Yes.
Or even temple whore is another word that's come about by modern scholars. So even though the words prostitute and whore have been used, obviously we can't apply the same lens that we do with today's definition of those words as what they did back then. Because a prostitute or a whore was actually a very different thing.
Yeah, it's not at all what we think it to be now, or what I guess the modern connotation of that word is. It was a very sacred thing and a very sacred duty to be that. And that's across a lot of cultures and a lot of like the temple priesthood and things like that. You'll find it in all of them. Yeah,
which is why, like, I mean, with our modern day lens, obviously we outcast people who are considered prostitutes, whores, or even people that like to sleep around. But that's something that's ingrained to us. Thank you, patriarchy.
That's it. But it actually was something to be completely different than what it is now. It was actually a really almost like an initiation kind of thing.
Because it was actually seen that in many ways that hetera actually translates better as companion. So implying that both the priestess companion and the companion of the goddess. So hetera was actually someone who would be that companion of the goddess. So because she'd be the priestess who's in there worshipping and doing all the ritual, that she was supposed to be like a physical embodiment consort or something.
I was going to say they're kind of like that physical embodiment of that particular deity or whoever they were in worship of.
Exactly.
So that's what it was. So it was basically a very sacred thing, for want of a better word, because it is with deity basically. And it's really interesting that you said that, like, because that links back to when you were saying was it the Stone Age, not the Stone Age, the next one. Yeah, Stone Age, where they would stay, because it's that similar progression now where the men who went hunting and things like that would stay with the women. That's where it became into the mysteries. So now they're moving into the temples and things like that as well, as we start to move into that Stone Age era.
Yes,
not
exactly.
Beyond the Stone Age era.
No, it's 100%. That's exactly it. And then, like, obviously, as you explore through all these different cultures, which I'm going to touch on a few of them even more so, but you'll see that there's, like, when we go through like ancient Greece history, everyone knows about the Greek Amazons.
Yes.
So these Amazonian
that's
women,
always the big one, isn't it? Yeah.
Which, whilst they weren't exclusively lesbian, it's commonly accepted that the Amazons were actually a pro-female society, that they would only use men for procreation to expand the tribe or for their needs.
Yep.
But other than that, men serve no purpose in the Amazonian community. And so
no, that's it.
Yeah. So it's like,
out you go. We don't need you in here.
Exactly.
And they were, it was also, weren't they also revered as poets and musicians and artists?
100%.
All the different priestesses of service and Yeah,
so that's kind of, I guess you would say, almost the dawning of our appreciation of the arts actually came from the divine feminine. Which is why I'm kind of jumping forward a little bit.
I know, sorry, I realized I jumped too far.
No, you're fine. But it's actually, they say that's why a Bachelor of Mathematics or Business or Science is considered to hold more than a Bachelor of Arts.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that society dictates that the patriarchal things, so the things that men did, which you'll see as we keep exploring this, they were more important than the arts.
Yes, so it was like money, structure, all of those kind of things. That's why they're always like law and things like that. It's always considered that better.
That's why, like, these days, and there's still a stigma in universities these days that if you go to uni and you study a Bachelor of Arts, people are like, oh, you're just doing an arts degree. Like, you just all...
You're bludging, just getting through kind of thing. Yeah, exactly. It does. There still is that same stigma right now. It hasn't changed.
Whereas I wish that we would flip it on its head and realize that those, as in, hang on, pause on that note. We
Yeah.
spoke to Orion not
I
so
was
long
about
ago.
to say, yeah, that's what came to my mind too.
And he was even saying, I think it was off camera though. I don't think
I
we said
think
it
it
on
was.
camera.
I think it was before. Yeah.
So we're talking about the fact that the most treasured aspects of humanity are our art and our food and our music and our culture and our dancing and our means of
Yeah.
expression.
Yeah, that ability to be able to create and to evoke that emotion, that
to
response, express everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no one gives a shit whether we can do advanced trigonometry.
No, that's what was that's yeah, I was gonna say, oh, I can't do that anyway. I'm in trouble. But that's what I guess one of the beings, the ancient ones and things like that, they'll be. That's what they revere. And
Yeah.
that's why offerings and things like that of those types of things are so much more meaningful for them than something else.
Exactly. And just while we're kind of on this note of the Amazons and stuff, like a lot of the Amazons actually praised the goddess in the form of Artemis or Diana.
Yeah.
And it's actually her, along with many others, were considered to, like the gods and goddesses were considered to be bisexual.
Yeah.
Would often flip between male and female partners depending on whatever they were trying to manifest or do.
Yeah.
Same thing goes with, I mean, we've got Apollo, Hermes, Zeus, and Hercules. I know I'm kind of jumping across into a different subject
No.
temporarily, but like it's common knowledge that
It is.
based on the mythos of like some of these gods and goddesses is that they would either be androgynous, like Apollo was seen as quite an androgynous male.
Yeah, so
Hermes.
Hermes.
And so was Hermes, and they would have male escorts or consorts and then female consorts, depending on whatever they were doing. So they kind of like lived in between the genders. Like
that's where they
give
lived
them
anyway.
the lens of male.
Yes. Yeah.
But really, I mean,
because everything comes from our, I guess, from our perspective or through our lens, and our lens is, I guess, through society as it is not so much as it is at the moment, but what it has been.
Yeah.
And what I guess the patriarchy has created.
And
so
I
that's
guess
what we then decide.
And this almost links to like what we're going through currently, like in today's society with the whole non-binary and the gender non-conforming people who want to be in between the genders. Like they don't I can't remember the acronym, but it's like assigned at birth. OAB.
Yes.
I think it's OAB or something. So it's like whichever one is assigned at birth. So I'm a cis male. My pronouns are he, him, his. And like these days, it's common practice when you meet someone to, especially at universities, they actually stand up in a lecture. And when they would stand up and say, hi, my name's Darren, he, him, his, and they'd be like, hi, Darren. And they know how to refer to me then.
Yeah.
So it's like these were one of the things that I wish we could go back to these historical figures and ask them, hey, what were your preferred pronouns?
What were your preferred pronouns? Was it even a thing for you? Like, did it even did it even matter, but like, was it even anything was it a thing? Like, it just is.
So going back onto topic though, so basically what I was trying to point out is that throughout history, this whole bisexuality, being gender fluid, being sexually fluid, morally elastic, all this stuff.
And being with outside of those, I guess, what you call the set roles of what we've sort of perceived, male, female, etc.
Yeah, so this was actually considered normal practice.
Yeah,
it was the norm back then.
Yeah. And it was such a mystical thing too.
Yeah.
It was such a mystical and spiritual thing as well.
And back then, things like sexuality was like a sacred thing as well. Like, sex wasn't seen as this taboo thing that, you don't talk about and, all that kind of stuff. Like we actually had a healthy attachment to sex.
Yeah.
And expressions of that sex with whoever you wanted to be with. So realistically, if you really wanted to apply today's labels back to historical figures, most of them would have been classed as pansexual.
Yeah, probably, yes.
Because they didn't care
it's
what gender the other person was. It's not about that. It's about something far surpassing that. It was about the connection, not about the gender or how they presented or how they expressed or whatever. It was just the person, which is the definition loosely of pansexuality, that the gender issue doesn't come up. But anyway, so this was all good and all in the world until the rise of the Romans. So when we had the Roman Empire, the Romans revered Mars. Now, for those that don't know, obviously Mars, both astrologically as well as based on the god form, he was the god of war. He was the god of war, aggression, power, all these things. But here's what you associate as the divine masculine in, well, these days we'd call it toxic masculinity.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
We can blame the Romans for that.
Yeah, that's right. That's where it came from, that expression of it.
Yeah, because like Mars was obviously one aspect of the god.
Yeah,
but he
and
was
that
the
extreme.
most manly, of the gods.
Yes.
Whereas you had someone like Apollo or Hermes or Zeus or whatever were considered to, because they were more bisexual, androgynous, pansexual, like gender fluid. Like even Zeus himself used to change genders to birth his own children.
Yeah. Why not?
So the Romans decided they needed this head honcho that was going to be all about this is what it means to be a man.
Yeah.
So men are supposed to be fighters. They're supposed to be aggressive. They're supposed to be all these things. And so that's kind of where that we started to see the split or the divide between what is masculine,
what is supposed to be
feminine.
Masculine, and what's supposed to be feminine. Yeah.
So this is like I would
their
say
version of it.
Yeah, exactly. So when people say this binary issue is a new issue, the binary was created.
It was actually created a long time ago because it wasn't a thing before. No, it's now being created as a thing.
Yeah.
And isn't it interesting when you were mentioning a lot of those gods and goddesses as well, like with Aries is seen as like a high, there is still to some degree, not a stigma, but they're almost not taken as seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Like Dionysus, all of those, they're always seen as those, they're the gods of partying and orgies and all the rest of it. Like there is actually still that now, which of course it makes sense because it's that creating that binary of what it is, and they're still in the fluid area that creates that there is sort of that kind of not negative connotation, but that little bit of they're not taken as seriously.
Well, even when I speak as it is. Even when I speak to some of my friends within the witchcraft community who are also part of the gay community, like I was sharing with them, like I mentioned this in the last episode that we recorded for Yule, that recently Kanunos has actually come into my awareness.
Yeah.
And one of his traits, he's supposed to be the god of freedom. And it's no wonder that after I've taken him on as my patron, that all of a sudden I've actually started practicing radical self-acceptance and radical self-expression, hence the blue hair. The old me would never have had the balls to dye my hair aquamarine, even though it's just hair color, but it's just because I would view myself through the lens that society put on me rather than just expressing myself how I want. And it's only since I started doing practices and daily I guess invocations with him and slowly stripping away all these societal things that I've taken on as bullshit rules of how to live my life. But now I've started to go, fuck what society thinks. I'm going to be me.
This is what I want to do. I want blue hair.
Exactly. But even talking to some of my gay friends, they were actually saying to me, a few of them anyway, they're like, I'm actually really jealous that you got to make a connection with a male god. I said, what? I didn't realize this was a thing, that apparently a lot of gay men struggle to make connection with God energy because the God energy that we perceive as society is the Christian or Abrahamic gods, which
is the very masculine. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So
that was something that I hadn't even thought about.
Yeah, either had I, until I had that conversation, I'm like, oh my God, like literally my God, meaning Kanunos. Like I was like, wow, he's teaching me so much, like in this short period of time since the dark moon that I met him. Like I'm already learning so much about everything, like just by sharing this story with people, I'm learning more about myself, more about the world, more about society, more about him.
And moving beyond those kind of things as well, moving beyond those labels or those particular boxes and things that people society will put you into.
And so this is another thing, because you had the Romans, which obviously were praising Aries or Mars, and they were celebrating that masculine in the quote unquote toxic way.
The extreme of one side. Yeah, that's right.
It's around the same time that obviously the Romans came across the Celts. So the Celtic tribes that were further up north. And because it was obviously the Celts were considered to be a very free people. They still celebrated Kanunos. And some of the other gods. Like
Yeah,
just one that comes to mind.
I know. It's
But
I wonder why.
yeah. But so Cernunnos was also another person who was another entity that would be more free and more able to express himself, and male and female was no relevance and all that kind of stuff. And he, like, obviously he's when we view him in a Wiccan or witchcraft sense, the horned god would obviously be the sacrificial god, the one who would then die for half the year and then be reborn, all that kind of stuff, like the green man,
to the
horned god,
underworld,
blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
So through all of that, that's when the Roman Empire became the Holy Roman Empire, and they ditched the polytheistic gods and took on Christianity.
Yeah, because there was quite a period where they had a lot of the
polytheistic.
Thank you.
Yep.
There's too many
polytheistic
for me. Because it wasn't always like that, where it was.
Yeah, so it was around that time when there was the rise of the Holy Roman Empire. They then started to cast all pagan gods, labeling them as the devil or as demons, and like Lilith and Pan, Cernunnos, like literally all the pagan gods were labeled as devils, and quite literally Pan and Cernunnos being horned. This is why the Christian version of the devil has horns.
Yeah.
Because that only happened from that
because they needed to demonize those ones.
Yeah. And in actual fact, if you look at the history of the Abrahamic traditions, they all borrowed from the same sources, and a lot of them got influenced by Zoroastrianism, which is a practice that was common in, I guess you'd say, the Middle
Eastern areas.
Ish. And with Zoroastrianism, there's this ultimate source of good and ultimate source of evil. So when the Abrahamic tradition saw that, they literally said, well, if God is over here, then we have to create
something
evil.
Else.
So they pushed all the other gods and goddesses that way. And that way they would scare people towards Christianity to convert.
Yeah.
And it's at the same time that obviously then sex became taboo. Sex out of wedlock, you can't do it. All of those
because that's it. You think about all of those things that they represent, like you were saying, like with now I can't even. There we go. See, Mercury
retrograde.
I can't speak.
Mercury
all
retrograde.
Of the things that those gods and those people represented, that freedom, all of those things, that
sexual expression, gender,
neutrality, all of those
things
stuff went over to that side as well.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was around that time that goddess worship was actually outlawed. Because they totally ditched the goddess, and it was all about the god. And in actual fact, like, I know this may be triggering to some people, but if you look at the lens from a non-judgmental and very open-minded perspective, and when we think of what we discussed at Yule and how Christianity took a lot of the pagan practices and then relabeled them, like Ostara became Easter, Yule became Christmas, all that kind of stuff. You could almost view the concept of Jesus Christ as their version of the sacrificial God.
Yeah. Because
in actual fact, his story is similar to...
It's actually very similar. And that, again, that's not to say that he didn't exist or that it wasn't a thing.
No.
There's actually a lot of evidence that we mentioned in the Yule that his birth was actually at a different time of the year, and it's just been created that way.
Yeah.
But the story is actually very similar if you look at, say, the Wiccan mythos and things like that, which goes through many cultures of that birth, death, resurrection.
Yeah. And not just with, like, he literally shares that with Osiris, Dionysus,
Yeah.
Baal, Tammuz, Adonai, Adonis, Dumuzi, Cernunnos, like all of these god forms.
And they're across all different cultures and things like that as well.
So when you think of it, if an entire population of many different cultures all see the world in the same way, but then bingo, bango, bongo, we're now all told to think a different way.
Yeah.
It's actually, we have a lot more in common with each other than we realize.
And that's the thing. And I guess that also comes into that inclusivity part that we're also talking about today as well, is because it's the similarities. As a society, I think that's half the reason we always think of the differences or what's different and things like that. But it's actually the similarities. When you start to look at the similarities, the differences become nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
In the end.
Exactly.
That's sort of the basis of it all.
So fast forwarding a little bit, so Christianity has come in.
Yeah.
We now have a new ruler, Constantine. So Constantine in history was known as the world's biggest homophobe. And I'm
Oh.
happy to say that. You can come for me if you want on the internet. Just look at the history.
Just
I've
look at
been to
history.
Rome.
Yeah.
I've been to Rome. I've heard all the stories. I did my research. Like, Constantine was the biggest homophobe. So anything that was considered like homosexual in nature, outlawed, and like it was just no, you're not allowed to do that kind of stuff, whatever.
Isn't that such a big thing? That because especially in those sort of times, whoever was in power had so much power. And so much influence. So if you think like we all have different opinions, we all have different beliefs, all of those kind of things. But if one person who is in power has that particular belief, that's how it spreads to a whole culture, a whole nation, or whatever. Like the amount of power that those people had can create such a difference in society, or create such a fork in the road for history.
And this is why, like, things like Pride, whilst I'm bring it to modern times again, Pride, this is why we still celebrate it now. Because, like, for what people don't realize is Pride was literally the few that were protesting against the many.
Yeah,
in order to fight to be seen, and fight to be heard, and fight to be recognized, and fight for equal rights. So as much as like a lot of corporations have jumped on the bandwagon and get cutesy little Pride themed t-shirts and jewelry and whatever else, it's so much more than that. But I also do appreciate that too, because I like rainbow things.
Well, that's right. Everybody does. Everybody loves a good rainbow. But I'll be honest, I actually didn't realize that was the origin story, for want of a better word, of where Pride Month and actually
it's the Stonewall riots.
Yeah, the Stonewall riots. This year was the first time I actually knew where it came from. I just thought it was, I didn't know. I've been celebrating it with friends and stuff and being out there for all these years. I just thought it was actually just a beautiful time when everybody got to celebrate and to really showcase, so that to try to create this community and things like that. I didn't realize where it actually.
No, it actually stemmed from the Stonewall riots.
Stonewall riots, where wasn't it that was raided? It was a club or a pub.
Stonewall was raided
because of that. Yeah.
So because homosexuality was actually outlawed until recent history.
Very recent history.
Yeah, like we're talking like the
I can't remember. I didn't actually write down
like around that time. So if you actually go back to 1920s Germany, it was actually pre-World War One. No, post-World War One. Post-World War One, pre-World War Two. Germany was actually one of the most gender and sexually fluid countries of its time.
Really?
Then World War Two happened, and then
see again, one person in power.
Yeah, one person in power. In actual fact, that's why I went to a place called Sachsenhausen. Is actually a concentration camp outside of Berlin.
Yeah,
and that was where they would take Jewish people. They would take the Roma, so the Roma gypsies, for lack of a better word. That's just the word that is used. So the Roma, the Jews, the gays.
Yeah.
So they were all taken to Sachsenhausen, and also prisoners of war. So that was a specific concentration camp for those people.
For those particular
and there were specific tasks that were assigned to them based on which one of those parts of
those groups they came from. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't want to turn on to a doom.
No, we don't want to go into that one. But
yeah.
But that's how it does. Like I was trying to say before, is that it can just be by one person's opinion, just by having so much power. It doesn't actually mean that it's necessarily the mass opinion, but that is what's now shaped that society and that lens. Where it all comes from.
And it's only now that you have like the younger generation so they're like the radical freedom fighters. They're like the ones who are taking all these agendas out there and they're really pushing them and pushing them.
Yeah.
And like that's why like our generation, we tried, but we kept getting pushback. The next generation tried again, they got pushback, but not as much. Then the younger generation again are now
they're
trying,
just like,
and they're just like, we don't care. We're a bull in a china shop. We are literally just coming through and rampaging and making change happen, whether you like it or not. And then the rest of us who have tried but failed are now jumping back on the bandwagon. Because now we have all these
actually happening. Yeah, that's it. It's happening now.
Yeah, exactly. But okay, so fast forwarding a little bit. So obviously we're at that point where Christianity, good, everything else bad.
Yeah.
God, good, goddess, bad. Heterosexual, good, homosexual, bad.
Yeah.
We're at that time. It's this time in medieval Europe where the burning times happened.
Yes.
So obviously, as we all know from our witch history, or a witch story.
Witch story.
Yeah, witch story. The burning times is actually, I don't know if you knew this, because I think of it this way. So men who practice the healing arts, so we're often gay, because they were outcast of society, they weren't considered the normal.
There's always that
man.
fringe,
Exactly.
fringe, always on the fringe of society. Yeah.
So they were actually burnt at the stake along with witches. Because a lot of them weren't considered to be following the patriarchal society of God and everything else like that.
And because witches was a female term at that time as well. Yeah.
Exactly. So the words, now apologize if I trigger anyone, but these I'm using for educational purposes. The words faggot and flaming faggot are actually historical. Well, when people call me that, this is me when I was younger and I was a little bit more like out there. If anyone ever called me a faggot, I would actually congratulate them and thank them for knowing their history. And they'd be like, what? And then I would then spend the next half hour educating them on the historical accuracy of that term and why it was relevant to me being a gay witch. So the faggot is actually a bunch of sticks made out of beech wood or beech trees, so kindling. Then they would have a bunch of a faggot of sticks, and you would light that and then use that to light the big fire that would then go up like a big poof.
See, this is just like massive mic drop moment for me, because I mean, I knew the word faggot was to mean a bunch of sticks to life, and I could never understand how that then became
a word for gay men.
Like a derogatory term.
Faggot or flaming faggot. Was used to burn.
I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
And to take it one extra layer, so the word fairy, which was used to which is still used to describe
same.
Men. So fagus, which is a mythic ruler of beech trees, which were the trees that were used as kindling.
Because it was beech wood.
Hence the word faggot. From the word fagus.
Yeah.
He was linked to a fairy or tree spirit.
Boom.
So that's why a lot of gay men who practice witchcraft or spiritual practices have gone to the fairy traditions, or they've used the word fairy to identify, because of the fact that it's historically accurate, and it's also a way we can reclaim these words.
Because it's actually like a spiritual thing, because it was the tree spirit.
It's a tree spirit, a fairy or a tree spirit named Fagus, which hence faggot and burning times. Ta-da!
Yeah, that's how it actually all came to be, because they were burnt along with the witches. My God.
So this is what I mean when I said at the very start of the episode, so much of this is intertwined.
Yes, I know it sounds awful, because I want to say I love it, because I always do whenever I find fascinating things. Like, it's not something that I love at all. However, it is just fascinating as to how that actually came about, and how it's actually very spiritually linked as well.
And then obviously I'm not just here to push the gay agenda. Like I've talked about like lesbian society with the Amazons. We've talked about the history of gays. Now there's a term that's had a revival of sorts in recent times, which is the term two-spirited.
Oh, I absolutely adore this concept. I think it is a beautiful
I think it's beautiful too. Now, I'm not an expert on this, and I'm also not First Nations, but I've done a little bit of research. So it was common in Aztec, Navajo, Mojave, and Hidatsa, I think that's how you pronounce it, Hidatsa, nations, for shamans to have like trans-like characteristics. And some of them would even practice homosexuality. And they were like two-spirited, meaning that they were neither seen as male spirit or female spirit. They were actually seen as like between the two spirits.
Yeah.
They had both.
Yeah, it was both kind of thing, isn't it?
Both spirits at the same time. Hence, like you're kind of the walker between the worlds, literally.
I was going to say, you're literally that union of the masculine and feminine that we often have.
And it's not just not just in those cultures, like also in the Pacific Islands, like the Fa'afafine, which exist in Samoa, are men who live their lives as women. They don't call them trans, they called Fa'afafine. And then you have the Mahu, I think was the name. I could be saying that wrong. I'm pretty sure that's from like the Polynesian cultures. So the Mahu were the people who born male identify or present female, but they're not considered trans because to them,
that's not a word to
Mahu
them.
and Fa'afafine, they're not.
Yeah, trans. That's it. It doesn't have a trans doesn't have a meaning to
No,
them.
to
It's
them.
already
No, because they have that third gender. And the same thing in
yeah.
India. In India,
Yeah.
there's actually on their passports has, I can't remember the name of it, no, but there's like male, female, and then the third gender, which is like genderless.
Oh,
I don't
I
remember
didn't
the word.
realize that.
Yeah, that it's existed for years, historically for years. So that's why when we say as Western society, like, oh my God, how come Canada being one of the first countries to push this whole thing of having gender X?
Yes.
As in,
Yeah.
or like, yeah, like, or
X to
gen,
the
sorry, or is it
yeah.
or is it gender Z?
I actually
I can't remember if it's X or Z.
I
I
think
now
it's
I'm blank.
X.
I think is it X? Yeah. Anyway,
I think
so
it's
like
X.
having that genderless or non-gendered or
Yeah.
whatever, like that. Canada was the first one to push that, and now so many people are questioning, like, oh, why are we doing that? But so many other cultures have been doing it for
Had
years.
actually already been doing it. Yeah, that's it. And just a natural part of their culture. Like it was
Yep.
already a part of it, had their own particular names and things like that, that it
Mhm.
wasn't seen as something different. It was actually just already.
And the only reason why it's different to the white, for lack of a better word, white, like Caucasian kind of, what would you call it? Like descendants of colonial times, like colonized nations. We are the ones who have this stigma because it's been ingrained into our culture. And
yes,
we
because
often
we
think,
didn't necessarily have it as like a term that's always been there, or
no,
because I guess a lot of it stems from those cultures that we were talking about, where it was like that one person in power or something took over and those kind of things. So it's been taken out a long time ago.
And unfortunately, it's the common acceptance these days that like just because white culture is dominant culture in a lot of places, that doesn't mean that our culture is the correct culture and that our labels are the correct labels. Like, but we often think that.
That's it. Yeah.
But anyway, not to take it to a dark place.
No.
Forwarding a little.
No, because I think it's an absolutely beautiful concept, what you were speaking about then as well.
Because it's just like that whole two-spirited thing. Like, we are considered to be like gay people in general, or anyone who's trans or gay or is part of the alphabet mafia. It's a fun way of referring to, because I say that because when I started off in the gay community, it was GLBT. Then apparently it then had to be changed to LGBT, because why should men come first? And then from there it became the LGBTI, then it became the LGBTIQ, then it became the LGBTIQA, then it became the LGBTIQA plus, then it became the LGBTIQA2S plus, then now I think it's the LGBTIQQA2S plus community. If I've missed anyone, I apologize. This is why I call us collectively the Alphabet Mafia. Because before we know, we are literally at every bloody letter.
I was about to say, my brain is now blown.
So, and that's no tea, no shade. It's just, it's too hard to remember, and I don't want anyone to feel that they're excluded. No,
that's it. You don't want anybody to be excluded in that.
So, fast forwarding it again. We're now into the modern era. So, one of the forefathers, I guess, of modern witchcraft is commonly referred, but I guess it's a term we could use for him, is Aleister Crowley.
Yeah.
So Aleister Crowley was actually known as being bisexual, openly. Yeah. And he actually did some studies. I'll use that word. Studies.
I do like that. That was really very, very well put. I like that.
Some very male on male erotic studies with Edward Carpenter. And they actually believe that they linked homosexuality with a development of the psychic or spiritual gifts. So they were the ones who came up with the concept that homosexuality or homosexual energy turns inward because you go within, self-exploration.
Yeah.
And that's how you develop magic or shamanism or whatnot. You develop those senses. Whereas heterosexual energy turns outwards. So you project your energy out. So in other words, I plant my seeds to create other life.
Yeah, it's that external expression. A new life is an external expression.
And so they were the ones who first came up with this concept. Well, in documented concept.
Documented, yeah.
And they say that it's equated to, if you think homosexual goes within, you develop psychic senses. They've linked that to a possibility for explaining Gaydar.
Oh.
So for those that don't know, Gaydar is that sixth sense that gay people have where they know someone else is gay without saying anything to them.
Yes.
It's just
Yeah.
this, we just know. And I
Yeah.
cannot explain it. That's why when we were talking about that episode about psychic senses, I almost wanted to throw that in as a smartass remark and say, I don't have claircognizance except when it comes to other gay.
That's right.
And then I just know that they're gay.
Just know. See, it's just a knowing. There you go.
It's a knowing. So I do have
It's a knowing.
claircognizance, but it's a very specific,
Yeah,
not really one that I can
specific
use.
Subset of that one. I love it.
So they were the ones who kind of came up with that concept. And obviously people have tried to prove and disprove it since, because no one really knows where Gaydar comes from. And it's possible, like, even though we call it Gaydar because it was the first used in that way,
Yeah,
like obviously like
sort of term for it.
I know a lot of lesbians that I was going to use a really bad website. I was going to say that could sniff out other lesbians, but I meant as in that they just know when someone else is a lesbian. And I know some trans people that can spot another trans person without even having to ask the question. They just know.
Yeah, just know.
So it's not exclusively to gays. So from these studies, you then had the work of people like, for example, Zsuzsanna Budapest. Now, she followed a lot of, is it Starhawk?
I think so.
Spiral
yes.
Dance?
Spiral Dance, yeah.
Spiral Dance by Starhawk.
Yeah.
So they created the Dianic traditions.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who practice that, now not all, but a lot of them are lesbian or feminist. Extreme
it's a
feminism
feminist
and lesbian kind of go hand in hand.
It's a female only. Excuse me. Excuse me.
You're fine. So a lot of the Dianic practices are female only, and they're a closed practice to females.
Yeah.
And then you had on the counter side, so you had fairy circles, which was the work of Arthur Evans. So he created the fairy circles, and then from there you had, I think it's Harry Hay and John Burnside. They created the radical fairy movement, who celebrate queerness, ecology, anarchy, community, transformation, paganism, and self-love. So we had the episode with Tommy Starchild. He actually spoke about radical fairy movement because he is part of the radical fairy movement. So you had them as well. So when you boil it all down, like if you have a look at how intertwined all of these histories and all the things we've spoken about, and flaming faggots and the adoption of the word fairy and the fairy practices and like this is why I say, like, we wanted to do a Pride episode because it's so interlinked. And even, like, just to take it one more,
I was going to say, even what is like the
even when you look at this, like, I know I've got one behind me, but this is just easier. So this is obviously the LGBT flag as it's been for many, many years. Now, obviously, as time has gone on, we've modified the flag. Now,
it's changed a little bit.
New colors have been added and all this other stuff because obviously we're trying to expand and include everybody. Now my camera's gone all funny. That's annoying. Anyway, so if we look at the colors of the rainbow flag, so originally it had a turquoise.
Right. See, look at that. I like it.
And a pink stripe. So originally pink was in reference to sex.
Yep.
Red was for life. Orange for healing. Yellow for sunlight. Green for nature. Turquoise for magic and art. Indigo for serenity. And violet for spirit. Now, obviously, then as we've added some new colors to the equation,
things have kind of changed a little bit as well. But how interesting are those correspondences when you start to look at, say, like magical correspondences of color as well?
We literally have like life, healing, sunlight, nature,
like if you're doing
harmony,
candle
spirit,
magic and all of those kind of things, like what a purple candle or whatever, when you're using for different spells and things like that, how interlinked that actually is as well.
Exactly. And I mean, now more recently, we've added black and brown to the flag, black representing diversity and brown for inclusivity. And obviously then, since then, we've also had the baby blue, baby pink and white added for the trans community and for the gender non-conforming people. But yeah, so that's why I wanted to kind of point it out, because it's like so ingrained and so interlinked, and there's so much crossover between the two, which is why when we say we're coming out of the broom closet,
where does that come from?
It's the same as coming out of the closet.
Yeah.
But just we put the word broom to make it
just
witchy.
put a broom in front of it.
Yeah, Exactly. So, and then there's some of us who have had to come
That's
out
exactly
of
it.
multiple
And then
closets.
some people have to do the two.
Yeah.
I was about to say that you've had to do a couple of closets.
Yeah. And I've gone in and out of them both interchangeably, sometimes in both, sometimes out of both, sometimes in one, sometimes in the other, like depending on
one and out of the other.
Depending on who I'm around,
where
or what
you're
I'm
at
talking
and where
about, or yeah.
I just find it
exactly.
so fascinating how interlinked it actually is with say spirituality or a spiritual practice or all of those things, like being walker between the worlds, all of those kind of terms and things like that is so intrinsically linked to witchcraft or whatever kind of practice that you follow, that it's all a part of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Even I guess even if we break it down to, you know, especially in Wicca, but in a lot of traditions or in witchcraft, that there's that masculine and feminine aspect, which is often assigned to male, female, but it's actually not what it's talking about.
No,
masculine and feminine isn't actually a gender. It's an energy. Yeah, it's an energy. So it's actually beyond binary things.
Yeah, and then I think it was Fiona Horn obviously addressed it in her recent book. For those that don't remember, we did an interview with her about this one. So it's Teen Magic. So Teen Magic, Witchcraft for a New Generation. And she actually has a whole section in here about, obviously, because as Wicca has grown and evolved, obviously there's now a lot of people who are gender non-binary or gender non-conforming, and they viewed it as being a very binary way of viewing things, being masculine and feminine, but she explains that it's not about the binary.
It's beyond
energy.
that. That's it.
We give it a gender because we're human.
Yeah, because we've given it that lens from our lens, but it's not that at all. It's completely, like we said, it's an energy, and how you can kind of work with those kind of duality and that within ourselves. Doesn't matter what your born gender or what you choose to, what your, I guess, your label, or whether you choose to be non-binary. It actually doesn't matter because it goes beyond all of that.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess hopefully this has stirred some interest in some of our viewers and listeners about exploring, maybe even if you're not gay or you don't identify as part of the alphabet mafia, like hopefully this has spurred on your interest to look into it a little bit. As I said, a lot of this stuff
I found it completely fascinating. Like, you just blow my mind with so many different things that I thought I knew. Like, I thought I knew stuff, but I had absolutely no idea, and how just intrinsically linked it was.
I should have that as a t-shirt. I know stuff.
Yeah, I know stuff. I thought I know stuff.
So now, obviously, this list of books is not going to be exhaustive in the slightest. But I just kind of grabbed the books that I had at hand quickly.
I was going to say, it's ones that you've read or you've looked through and things like that, so you can recommend.
Yeah, so there's obviously many others. But obviously, I said, so we had Teen Magic by Fiona Horn.
Yeah.
Now we've had this guest as well. So Colin Bedell, he has a book called Queer Cosmos. So it's all about the astrology of queer identities and relationships. Now, whilst it's not specific about queer things, it's Michael Herkes. So he's got Glam Witch, which is a magical manifesto of empowerment with the great Lilithian arcane mysteries. He's coming on the show soon.
He is.
Bit of inside information. But yeah, so I wanted to talk about his as well, because it's that whole, I mean, and when you meet Michael, he expresses his gender in the most amazing way, like makeup, color, the clothes he chooses to wear, the whole thing.
Glam Witch basically sums him up to a T.
Exactly. Now we have Queer Magic, Power Beyond Boundaries. So this one was edited by Lee Harrington and Ty Phoenix Kyliston. I think that's how you pronounce it. So this is basically a collection of different works from all different other writers about various different topics. Then we have Queer Magic, LGBT plus Spirituality and Culture from Around the World by Thomas Prower. So another good one. So this actually explores every culture in the world, and it talks about the mythos of their belief system, and then what we've learned from that culture when it comes to the queer identity. Whilst this is not specifically about gay things, but Sons of the Goddess, this was the first book I ever read by Christopher Penczak. So
This
I
one has
identify this
I was
one.
going to say that has a special meaning for you as well.
It does, because
Yeah.
obviously Christopher being brought up Catholic and being gay himself, and then discovering witchcraft, like this was one of my awakening books.
Yep.
I then have The Way of the Horned God, A Young Man's Guide to Modern Paganism by Dancing Rabbit.
Lovely.
So obviously that's one that I'm reading currently.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm like,
as well as this one. It's called The Path of the Green Man, Gay Men, Wicca, and Living a Magical Life by Michael Thomas Ford.
Yep.
And then I don't have the other one because they're out of print everywhere I've looked, but I've got Queering the Tarot by Cassandra Snow. She's also written a book called Queering the Craft, but I can't seem to get it in Australia.
Oh, yeah.
I've tried looking everywhere. And then one of the original books that I discovered, like the pages are even slightly yellow. That's how old this book is.
I know, I love that.
It's Gay Witchcraft, Empowering the Tribe by Christopher Penczak. And so I guess, was there anything else you wanted to share?
Well, I was just going to say, if there's any other books that any of our listeners and our viewers know of, please feel free to comment them underneath or let us know, because it would be really great to like share the different resources that people have actually had, that you've actually read, or that you know of as a great resource. Because like we said, this is not exhaustive and it doesn't always cross across everything. So please pop down some extra ones down there so that everybody can kind of share.
In actual fact, so I had asked Matt Oren, actually, I asked him if he had any reference material on gay witchcraft and whatever, and he sent me, so he's posted on his Instagram this big picture of like lots of books.
Awesome.
I tried to find some of these. Some of them are really hard to find, or they're super expensive.
That's the trouble. Yeah.
Because there's some like by Thompson, you've got Gay Soul, Gay Spirit, and there was a third one. I think it's Gay Body is the third one. So there were three like soul, like spirit, and body.
Yeah,
like a trilogy
kind of thing.
There's Two Flutes Playing by Rona. There's Sex and Spirit by Robert Barzan. There's Gay Spirituality by Toby Johnson. Gay Fairy and Folktales by Peter Casharali. The Essential Gay Mystics by Harvey. Homosexuality in the Horoscope.
These last names.
Homosexuality in the Horoscope by Carl Gunther Heimsoth. The Gay Wicca Book by Bruce Wilborn. Witchcraft in the Gay Counterculture by Evans. So I mentioned him in our today's stuff. Gay Spirit Warrior by John Stowe. Then we have Coming Out Spiritually, The Next Step by De La Huerta. Then I have Queering the Tarot, Queering the Craft by Snow. Another Mother Tongue by Gran. The Gay Guy's Guide to Werewolves and Other Man Beasts by Mel Mystery.
Oh.
The Scarlet One by Raji Dorotes. Blossom of Bone by Connor. The Scented Garden of Abdullah by Crowley. Queer Spirits by Roscoe. Greek Homosexuality, I don't know the author of that one. The Gay Kama Sutra by Colin, I can't read his last name, it's too small. And Queer Myth, Symbol and Spirit, Castle's Encyclopedia of. That's just
perfect.
Some others.
Yep.
But there's heaps more.
Yeah, that's it. There's heaps more. So yeah, feel free to pop them down there so we can, everybody can share them.
Maybe what I might do is I might stick a link or maybe a list.
Yeah.
The ones I've got plus the ones that Matt's shared with me, plus some that some of my other friends have shared with me, like David and Tommy shared a few titles with me, but I couldn't find them anywhere. But yeah, so happy reading, everybody.
Yeah, go explore.
But to leave you all with a little excerpt from Gay Witchcraft.
Love it.
So, where was I going to read from? I'll go from here. I'm going to go, it's a, just sit back and relax. Just my soothing voice. So, the process of spirituality is an increasingly hot topic in the gay community. Many gays and lesbians feel ostracized by the mainstream religions in which they were raised. Some have tried to reconcile, but many are searching for a tradition that will openly accept them as they are, with no struggle or reconciliation. We are seeking positive images, role models, and archetypes of the divine, perhaps something to which we have a historical connection. And he says, I found all of this and more in witchcraft. The coming out experience in modern society is akin to a magical or shamanic initiation, regardless of whether it is easy, hard, early, or late in life. Coming out changes you, your life, and your perspective forever. Magical initiations open you to a new world. If you come to the magical path after coming out, you know what an initiation can be like. Or, like me, you may choose the magical path at an early age and come out a few years later. Each opens a new world and opens new doors. Simply by being gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgendered, you have an experience different from the majority of people in the world. As we've seen in the past, queer mystics were healers, teachers, artists, poets, scholars, and aides to the community. They were visionaries, and they still are. We are now the visionaries. Is it no wonder why so many queer people find happiness in the theatre, music, writing, and art? These arts are sacred. We want to creatively express our experiences and share them with others to help others understand our unique view as those who dwell between worlds. As they understand, hopefully they too will heal and find joy. Many of us work in arts, health, counseling, and service industries because they are the only ways our society really supports these natural tendencies. We are going forward, yet intuitively, spiritually remembering our roots.
I love that.
Such a good little
Love that. It's
excerpt. So I thought I'd
beautiful.
share that with
That
everybody.
summarizes kind of everything all in one paragraph. I
And
love
then
it.
also, I took it
It's
back
awesome.
a few paragraphs just to
Yeah, I
add the
know.
little
I
bit
did. I
about the
loved
coming
it.
out and whatnot,
I think it's
because
beautiful.
like we've done an episode about coming out of the broom closet, and
Yeah.
like coming out of the actual closet, as in they're both actual closets, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's it. I
Coming
can
out of
see
the
a
Alphabet
visual.
Mafia closet.
Yeah.
So remembering that whilst it's Pride Month, some people might feel a little bit pressured to come out of either closet or
Yeah.
both.
Yep.
And just remember that everyone comes out in their own time, that it's very easy to get hooked on the bandwagon and want to, you know, go out there and live your best gay life or your best witchy life or your best gay witchy life or whatever.
Whatever it is.
But just remember that if you aren't someone who's ready, that's okay. It's okay to just wait. Like up until we did this podcast, Vicky wasn't even out.
No, that's
As
it.
in, I mean,
That's
out of
exactly
the broom closet.
Yeah.
Yes, no,
But
she's
that's
very much
exactly
married to
it.
Scott.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It really was. And that's, I actually got a lot out of that paragraph, even though I know it wasn't necessarily, but the initiation part about how it's actually a stepping out, that everything is going to be changed from that moment onwards. So make sure that you're ready and don't ever feel pressured for any of it.
Absolutely. But then if the other thing is, if you want to talk to some people,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a member of so many gay witchcraft
I was about to say, there's a
groups.
lot of groups and things like
So
that, like
many.
Facebook and all of those.
Yeah. So if you've been a long time listener, or even if you just tune in for this episode and you want to be connected to some of these groups, just shoot me a message. Like, I'm on Facebook. You can send me a friend's request. I don't bite.
Yep. Send it through our page.
Or send it through our page if you don't want to connect personally.
Yeah, the podcast page. Yeah, just send us a message. You don't have to put it doesn't have to be a comment or anything like that either.
Yeah,
if you
can
want
do
to
it
still remain it
privately,
do it
one-on-one.
privately as well.
Yeah, because we're both here to help all of you navigate your way through your witchy and Alphabet Mafia world.
That's it.
But until next time, I hope you have all enjoyed this episode as much as I've enjoyed researching it. And hopefully we've inspired you to just pause, take a breath, reflect a little on history, and realize that we're actually all a lot more in common than we realize.
Yeah, beautiful. See you later.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.